Hey, what's up? Time for another game theory video. Remember, if you like the videos, like, sub, silly, comment, share, support the channel if you want. I appreciate it. Thanks. Today, I'm going to do a topic. I'm kind of surprised that I guess I'm going to do it, but since I've been talking about some of this stuff, I'm going to talk about where does the term footsies actually come from? What does footsies even mean? And I guess I had never actually thought about doing a video on this specifically, but some of these videos, I guess, has got me kind of thinking about it. And then looking at some videos' explanation of what they say footsies is or where it came from, I think is completely wrong. It's not how we talked about it when I was a kid in the arcade at all, right? I don't know. I guess footsies is kind of just like a broad general term for almost neutral now. But to be honest, footsies is actually very, I feel like, kind of simple. Actually, I think the reasoning would maybe surprise you, I guess. And to make this video a little bit more interesting, I'm going to go into more how Ryu's fireball became a poke. And I want to talk about the hop kick and how the hop kick kind of augmented some of the more traditional aspects, or it was more of the sort of, nail in the coffin, so to speak, for the more traditional sort of perhaps idea of footsies, maybe, if you will. Anyway, Ryu's duck short is actually why we used to call things footsies, right? And I'm going to show some examples in this video. And you got to remember, back in the day in the original Street Fighter 2, and I've said this before, how there's different shades of gray of characters, right? Most characters could not, in what a new school player might think, they could not poke you while you were ducking, right? Most characters didn't have that traditional, what is now a traditional, let's say a stand medium kick that hits you ducking while you're blocking, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Most characters, if they had pokes that hit you when you were ducking, it was a ducking attack, okay? So if we watch this video, I've said before, right? Traditionally in the original Street Fighter 2, Ryu had very, let's say, weak low attacks, right? They did not go very far compared to the other characters, right? So Guile, boom. I mean, Guile has so much more range than Ryu, right? So what did you do this with Ryu to try to combat this? You played footsies, is what we said back in the day. And by that, we mean you would check the guy playing footsies, tap, 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 short, while you tried to get in, right? And of course, there was the occasional, you try to low roundhouse to low forward, but generally you checked the guy over and over again, right? With your duck short. That is what footsies was. That was your high priority normal that you're like tap, 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 mashing to get in. Because back in the day, if you are old enough to have played, remember Ryu's fireball, and you see there, look, it looks like there's no hitbox there yet, right? But it wasn't until Championship Edition that they actually kept the hurt box back a little bit, that Ryu could actually fireball pokes. Ryu could not poke limbs. He could not play footsies, so to speak, maybe with a newer school, or a not OG player might say, right? You couldn't poke with the fireball so much in the original Street Fighter 2. It wasn't until Championship Edition that you see his hurt box. You see how it's not on his knee? Because it's not on his knee, Ryu could play footsies, so to speak, poke a limb with his fireball from ranges where before he could only do it with his footsie attack, his mashing on duck short, which he would check other characters, because duck short it had such high priority, right? And we said priority back in the day. We didn't talk about hurt boxes and hitboxes. We used speed and, hurt boxes and hitboxes, everything to encompass it all into one, right? So if we look at a game like Super Turbo, we have old school Ryu here, right? That's footsies right there, right? Both of our duck shorts are very powerful. They're basically invincible, right? So if we go here compared to Turbo Ryu, or I guess it's Hyper or Super Turbo Ryu, Turbo Color, right? If I play duck short with him, if we play footsies, I always win, right? Because once you got to Super Turbo, some of that idea of what was a traditional Shoto, what was a traditional Fireball Dragon Punch character, those lines started becoming blurred. You could not play footsies the same way you could, right? because you just didn't have the priority on your attack, right? Again, here, we go back to the super, these old school, yeah, see, look at this. Boom. I can check you. I'm playing footsies with you because my duck short is basically invincible to all you can do, right? Excuse me. If we go to the super turbo version, look at that. I can beat that pretty much for free by playing footsies with him, right? And this is important because you got to remember, this is back in the day when not all characters they could not walk forward and poke you. Not every character was Chun-Li. Not every character was, say, Honda. Not every character had Geef's stand medium kick or something like that, right? Shoto characters, their, let's say, quotation marks weakness, is that when they poked you, they had the Fireball Dragon Punch trap, of course, but when they poked you, they had to play footsies with you, okay? And maybe that sounds stupid, but you got to remember, back in the day, most people picked Guile and Ryu, okay? And then Dhalsim if they knew what they were doing. Right? You know what I mean? But back in the day, most people, it was a lot of Ryu and a lot of Guile, right? And Guile had the Sabat kick, which of course hits you ducking. But Shoto characters could not poke you unless they were playing footsies. And everyone plays Ryu and Ken, basically, to a certain degree. So it was just a broad term, playing footsies, right? You know what I mean? So if we look at here, there's going to be more examples here. You can see how powerful, so to speak, the old Shotos are. I can sweep it. He can't check me. He can't play footsies with me the same way. And then if we get to, say, Super Turbo Ryu versus Super Turbo Guile, right? I can still beat it, but it is much more specific. It is not as lenient. Like, look at Ryu. I can get much closer. Do you see that? Old school Ryu, I can get in and I can get a few duck shorts, or a couple duck shorts, at a reasonable range and still play footsies with you. Whereas Super Turbo Ryu is much more specific, right? And because of those things, right, I have to start augmenting the style, let's say, a progression of the style. All games progress. I had to start poking you with my Fireball, or I was allowed to poke you with my Fireball once Championship Edition came in. Ryu starts red fireballing pokes where he might normally have been able to play footsies, right? Now, of course, he could do it in Championship Edition. He didn't have the red fireball. But once you got to Super Turbo, you cannot play footsies from the same range anymore with Super Turbo Ryu, right? You have to start using these other pokes, right? And again, there's more examples, as you can just see, you know. This is just more examples like shown like there. And you got to remember, oh shit, I'm sorry. That's the quality control here we got here. That's the quality control in the FGC on MBC. Red fireballing pokes again, right? Let's go back to where I was too, which is another important thing just to remember. And the red fireballing pokes. You got to remember, I think this is where we at. Remember, when you're ducking, and this gets into like just how, I guess, you know, if you want to say how deep the game is. You know, if you're like really in the zone, so to speak, you can recognize those little distances of your character being able to whiff a hitbox if they're standing. And if you were to duck, you know, then you gotta block it, you know. But again, see, there are these ranges here where normally if this was, you know, I can't play footsies at that range if I was Super Turbo Ryu. I have to play footsies. See what I mean? See, it goes through his leg, and his leg still stays back a little bit, unlike original Street Fighter 2, where it starts to protrude. It's a protrusion. I don't know English. A protrusion is protruding into his territory, right? And so you can be poked, right? Do you get what I'm getting at? Back in the day in Street Fighter 2, before you could like originally start poking with fireballs and everything like that, you poked with duck short. Duck short is what we called footsies. Because these Shoto characters, and obviously a fireball, you gotta block ducking, right? You know what I mean? So you can poke limbs, all this kind of stuff. Now let's get to a game like Alpha, where Alpha is really kind of more of the nail in the coffin of, you can see the idea of footsies is really changing, and the augmentation of, you know, footsies is changing, right? And that's not that I think that I hate Alpha 1 or something like that, but you can tell Alpha 1 it's starting to go in a different direction and all that kind of stuff, right? So if we here see, I can still, I can still play a little bit of footsies, a little bit, but it's pretty specific in Alpha 1. Like, I'm going to trade even from that far if I'm not doing it perfectly, right? But then we have these new sort of moves, these different ways of playing footsies, so to speak. Like I was showing the Ryu stand forward, right? His hurt box goes back. It's almost like it's specific because it knows that Ryu, we can no longer play footsies the same way. We can no longer play footsies the same way with mashing on duck short, all that kind of stuff. So we're giving you kind of different moves. You could say his stand forward kind of encompasses a little bit of that old school stand short to pull back your hurt box. You know what I mean? Since he doesn't have that kind of stand short in this game, the anti-air one, and he pops down on your head, right? Do you see it's kind of specifically for footsies, where at this range he might have normally, an old school Street Fighter, he might have normally been able to play footsies, but now he can't. Now because he can't play footsies in that thing, we also have another augmentation to Ryu's more sort of traditional style, if you will, and he can play footsies from that range with his hop kick to go over lows, right? It's a progression of the character, so to speak, and it's a very, I would say, dangerous progression that must be handled lightly. And I've made many videos about how the hop kick is kind of a conundrum of a move because it's really playing with fire on how to make the move properly. I think if you're thinking about Street Fighter trying to make Street Fighter the best game possible, so to speak. I've made videos of how I would more so put the hop kick in a game, but it's interesting, right? I can't play footsies the same way, so now I can play footsies with the hop kick. And of course, we still have these ranges where I can fireball the poke, so to speak. It's becoming more and more important, right? But again, here we go. See? Boom. It's going to hit him, right? We have the hop kick. These other, I'm playing footsies in a little bit different way because I can't check you anymore in the same way. Look, I can't duck short that anymore. I can't play footsies with you in the same way anymore. Footsies is changing, I guess, if you want. Footsies maybe now more so is more, characters are, more tools whatsoever. But, I was just thinking about this because I saw people trying to say what footsies is. And I'm like, man, yeah, footsies is ground game. But, people are saying, well, where did footsies come from? I'm going to be honest. It's just mashing on duck short with Ryu. You know what I mean? I know maybe that sounds stupid and you might think I'm stupid for saying that, but that's really why we called things footsies back in the day. I'm not joking. Like I don't know if there's actually a video about it on YouTube that I haven't seen, but I've checked videos and I'm like, dude, that's not why we called things footsies at all. Like I know, I don't know if people are trying to act like they're big brain. Like, oh, in Street Fighter 2, we're called footsies because of this. It encompassed everything, blah, blah. No, we called footsies, well, at least, I don't know. Maybe someone's going to be like, no, in my town, we called footsies because somebody stepped on my foot while we were playing or some shit like that. But really, that's why you called things footsies back in the day. That's what it came from. Because even in the original Street Fighter 2, there was not the same kind of neutral. Like Guile and Dalsum dominated basically everybody. You know what I mean? And then, it was basically, like I said, it's basically everyone back in the day, generally speaking, at least when I was a kid, I'm sure there's other people too, but, basically generally in the day, you had a lot of people playing Ryu and Ken because, they're the main characters of the game. And then whoever's not playing a Ryu or Ken, you're playing Guile. And then if someone knows what they're doing, they're playing Dalsum, which if you're not old enough to remember, I don't know if you guys know this, Ryu's Hurricane Kick cannot even go through Dalsum's Fireball in the original Street Fighter 2. Did you know that? He is fucked. It is bad. So the point is, Ryu gets outpoked by everybody, but Ryu, if you're old enough to play these games, you mash on duck short like a motherfucker and you try to check people as much as you can. And that's where the term footsies came from, because you play footsies with the other character. And because not every character can just walk forward, not every character has a standing normal that hits you ducking. That's where footsies came from. I don't know. There's a little Street Fighter lore, I guess, if you're whatever. Remember, if you like the videos, like, subscribe, comment, share, support the channel if you want. I appreciate it. Thanks. The end.